So here's our candidate for an avant-garde game that will not necessarily pave the way for tomorrow's mobile entertainment. It's one that has already actually been mentioned today, cited today, untitled game by the art group Jody, and it's in fact about 10 years old. As we know, this is a collection of game modifications using the Quake game engine. Jesper Juhl, who is the one who cited this game earlier today, thinks that it does not represent the proper balance between gameness and art, but it's exactly what he condemns in this work that makes us interested in choosing it as an example. And that is that the original Quake game was a first-person shooter. You ran through tunnels shooting demons. Jody gives us a very different game experience, as you can see. An experience in which the graphics have been radically altered and pared down. The interface actually still works, and you can hear the sounds of the game. But the visual field is completely disoriented. As Jody says, oops, I'm having trouble. If the video played a little bit. As Jody says, the purpose of this game is to erase the story and the figurative sight of the games. The starting idea was to find very basic forms like a line or a square, just black and white, and attach these forms to the behavior of the code so that we would have a better view on how such a game is driven. What are the dynamics of the game? Jody's modifications allow us to experience the game in a new way. They force us to become conscious of the conventions of the game space that are usually intuitive and invisible. They make what is familiar, unfamiliar again and new. And we would argue that's one of the things that avant-garde games do. They make us think about games and gameplay in a new way, making the familiar unfamiliar. To fully appreciate something like Untitled Game, we need to go beyond the definition of cool to a historical understanding of what avant-garde meant in art from the 19th century to the beginning of the 21st. We start with the meaning that everyone knows. Historically, avant-garde is a military term referring to a group of soldiers out in front of the main body of the army to face
structured according to the rules of linear perspective. That's the image on the left. A virtual window. It is seamless, transparent, a continuation of the viewer's world. The other image is of the new Super Mario Brothers game, which is strongly structured according to the rules of flow. And frankly, it's a really fun game. I love the game. So the challenge is crystal clear. Move to the right of the screen in this game. You know what you're supposed to do. But there are so many delightful tweaks and wrenches thrown in and these goofy power-ups that make you bigger than you would expect to be. They keep you delightfully engaged. It's a well-designed game. The game is not so much, in comparison to the painting, the game is not so much a seamless continuation of the viewer's world in terms of space. It's more about maintaining a seamless causality. The player and computer's actions are locked together in time. And even though part of that locking together requires a struggling back and forth. So it's not just pure pleasure like Nirvana or whatever. Part of that pleasure is the struggle. So minutes and hours fly by as the feedback loop is kept fluid, fun, and lubricated. So what Picasso is the Renaissance painting, Jody is the first-person shooters. It's like a little bomb, I guess. So Picasso doesn't funnel viewers into a virtual world to play inside a perspective space. He allows viewers to play with linear perspective itself as they gaze at the surface of the painting. He doesn't advance the rules of perspective, he rewrites them. So let's just watch a bit of the video again. So this is the level Slipgate from Untitled Game. And actually watch what's happening. The colors are wrong because I did a video capture. So if that cube is supposed to be blue, for example, the lattices are supposed to be white. So that's my fault. But the conventions are there. Jody doesn't wall players inside the flow channel to experience a world in which their actions fit perfectly. They allow players to play with flow itself. FPS conventions such as the virtual dungeon space and ferocious enemies are still there, but they're half abstracted. The dungeon walls are only half work. The collision geometry is not in the same place as the visual geometry. So you're skirting in and out of the visual to ultimately hit the collision geometry. You're realizing, why do we always couple graphical representation, physical representation, we can decouple them and have, frankly, just more formal experimental games. So although graphically Untitled Game and Space Draft are both chaotic, in terms of gameplay, Space Draft is the opposite to Untitled Game, which can be trudging and feel inhuman at times. Playing Space Draft, you can't help but be propelled forward, but how you're doing it remains a mystery. So Jeff Minter explains, you'll always make progress in Space Draft even as you die repeatedly. So the game is flowing, it's really overflowing in a way, and it kind of splits you as a player. You're really looking at the surface in one way, but you're also trying to figure out what's going on in another. So you feel split. It's over intense, but it's also under intense, and it's hard to actually get a bearing on this odd, anxious, bored feeling you might be fostering, such as a magic circle. So he says, all play moves within a playground, forbidden spots, isolated, hedge round, hallowed, within which special rules obtain. All are temporary worlds within the ordinary world, dedicated to the performance of an active part. So he's very contemporary, modern, Western, scientific in his approach. And his conception is essentially binary. You have world 1, ordinary social world. You have world 2, delicate play world. His model is based on magical thinking. Okay, let me just read this, sorry. So he thinks the ordinary world is a lot more powerful than the play world. For example, when he says the spoil sport shatters the play world itself, he reveals the relativity and fragility of the play world. He robs play of its illusion. So it's somewhat of a cynical Western outlook. Like, since religion and all of that is just phony, that anything that references it is also going to be weak, because he's using his theories of play based on the history of magical and religious thinking. So the avant-garde denies this binary formulation, as do pre-modern cultures. So the avant-garde is picking up on the pre-modern. There's evidence of this everywhere, from the fixation on African and primitive art to this colonial appropriation of what we feel is more vital, and so on. So if we allow Huizinga to say that play worlds are indeed delicate, we must then introduce a third world that is sacred, real, or dangerous. This is the place from which unknown strange forces are called forth, regardless of their supernatural, subconscious, irrational, and so on. We need to have a place that acknowledges that there's a powerful, transformative force that comes through play, comes through the magic circle. So Huizinga wasn't historical or cross-cultural enough in his analysis. The circle is drawn historically not only to protect magical play from the dulling ordinary world, but for example, in pagan practice, it was also used to protect participants from the dangerous forces that they were conjuring. They drew it around themselves so the crazy forces couldn't hurt them. Even more problematic to Huizinga is the fact that it was also used as a means to dangerously bridge worlds together, such as the 16th century Foss legend, where a man draws the magic circle, summons a demon who eventually kills him. So the idea of breaking the magic circle as some postmodern new thing is like a very bad way of looking at it. So the magic circle for pre-moderns and avant-garde is essentially hybrid, and this is what avant-garde political works activate. They blend worlds together. Nicely commented. Through various means, Gezira encourages people to explore the intersection of the ordinary, play, and the chaotic real. So as you're logged into Second Life and your frame rate slow down because your computer can't render the flood of objects, at least she'll keep you company and chat with you about why she's doing this to you, and try to teach you how you could do it to other people. So it's a very polite way. It's Hakim Bey, an anarchist, talks about sweet griefing. And it's this weird interplay between trickster figures and mentor figures and guide figures. In us moderns, those seem like totally opposites. Like, no, guides tell you logical reasons in which you should do things, and tricksters are trying to just mess with you. A pre-modern and avant-garde way of looking is that, no, the trickster is the guide. So it is interesting to contrast the openness and sort of the nurturing, sweet griefing of Gezira with more elitist forms of griefing in which every conceivable social rule and gaming convention is broken. For